Hey there! Today we're going to talk about this pelican, which is actually not a pelican. This is a Reform 1745. I've received a lot of requests to review this pen, and then someone sent me one. So thank you very much. He told the same story about the pen that I understood at some point. These pens were made for German school children. And then I'm not sure whether they were suddenly discontinued or replaced with some other pen, but you can find quite a lot of these. Now, most of these are new old stock, NOS, that's how you will see that advertised on eBay, which means they are vintage pens, no longer produced, but they have not yet been inked, so they are kind of new. I didn't get this in a box. I'm not sure whether there was a box. I would not be surprised if there was none, but today we'll talk about this pen. So I'll cover the parts of the pen, tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then I'll do a writing sample. Let's start with the cap. On top of the cap there's nothing, just a little black thing. And then we have the clip. The clip is marked Reform, and it has some shape on there. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, but it's there. Clip is something that feels like I could bend it with my thumb. It works well, but I'll be a little careful there. It has these sort of gold trimmings. I'm sure it's not actually gold, right? It's made for school children. A little gold ring there. It's stickered. It says original, well, probably original, Reform 1745. You unscrew the pen. You can post it. You have a two-tone nib, which is actually not bad. I know this won't focus, but it looks kind of cool, I think. It's fine, very fine. Maybe a little bit scratchy. It says Reform Iridium Point, and one of the more interesting aspects, I think, is that I'm not sure whether I would call it semi-flex even, but it is quite springy, so that's kind of nice. You couldn't see that, but I was testing it in my thumbnail, that way you can see where the tines spread open. Okay, one thing that's interesting, I don't really have a cloth here, so I'll just do it by hand, is that you can unscrew the nib and the feed as with a Pelican pen, and the nib collar will just come off. I'm not sure whether you can. I don't think you can take out the nib and the feed from the nib collar. This is useful for cleaning, obviously, and also it can be useful to put some silicone grease in a cotton swab and then very carefully put it in there so that you can actually lubricate the piston, because this is a piston-filled pen. Okay, so black, some bluish type of stuff there, green, and then the piston turning knob. Now what's interesting is that this is an ink window. I'm going to operate the piston and you will see that show up. It needs some grease. Yeah, definitely needs some grease. Okay, so you see? You saw the piston there? Now it's slowly retracting again. So it's an ink window. That's useful. You can see how much ink is left by just turning it up and down. Currently there's no ink in there, otherwise with no nib, of course, it would all fly up. So that's it, pretty much. It's not the biggest pen around, but if it's made for children, then clearly you don't want a pen like this, because that's too big for them. So I think it's a pretty decent size, though. It's big enough, and when you post it, then I should say it's definitely big enough, right? So that's a positive pen. What do I like about it? Well, I think the design is fairly funky. It's a little retro. I mean, am I the only one who sees some Pelican resemblances here? I mean, even look at the little the Pelican bill on the clip. I think Reform looked to Pelican for some inspiration. The collar, the shape. But that's okay. I mean, it's a fun pen. It's a piston filler. I like that. I like the ink window. Very useful to see how much ink you've got left. Things I don't like so much, well, the nib. Being a very fine nib, it tends to be a little scratchy. It gives quite a bit of feedback when writing, but it's not as bad as you might expect it to be. And you know, usually you can get these pens for something like $12. I think I've seen them fly across the eBay for that price. So if you scout a bit, then you can be pretty sure to find a nice copy of the pen, and Should I say that? A nice example of the pen, a nice pen. And that's pretty much to it. So you get a decent pen made for school children, so it's supposed to last, I guess, and it's funny to use. So the next thing I'll do is a writing sample. I hope that's going to be useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye. Okay, so writing with the Reform. 1745. I nearly made it 1754, but it is 1745. The nib, I would say, is fine, and the ink is Noodler's Nikita. A nice red. I hadn't used that for a while, and I decided it would be nice. I mean, if this is a school pen, then I can imagine teachers putting red ink in there. Okay, let's do a bit of writing. Okay, maybe some fast writing. So far this was fairly smooth. For such a fine nib, I would say it was very good. Let's do some fast writing and see how well the feed keeps up. We had a bit of a skip there, but that actually may have been me, because when I do this very quickly I don't really see any skipping. Okay, line variation. The pen was sold to me as being semi-flex. Now that's quite a bold claim, so I'd like to see how much of that we can actually reproduce. This is no pressure. I'm beginning to add pressure. And this is a lot of pressure. Well, that's actually not bad. I guess you could really describe this as being semi-flex. Hello there. Yes, line variation. Doesn't look too bad. What about the wetness of the pen? A nice even patch of ink. Still a little bit wet there. Fairly wet. And for such a fine nib, again, I don't think that's a particularly bad result. So I have to say, I think it's a fascinating pen. A nice little piston filler. Slim. Pretty well built. Not at all a bad deal. So if you can pick one of these up, then I would do so. Pretty nice. As to scratchiness, well, it is a fine nib, it is a cheap nib, but it's not nearly the worst I've ever felt. You hear it. But during regular writing, I don't think it's particularly bad. So, I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.